Mexico continued their European tour yesterday when they took on Bulgaria in Sofia in a friendly international. And it was Mexico who opened the score with a header from Misael Espinoza after 12 minutes. But Bulgaria were level just before the break. After 36 minutes, Hristo Stoichkov found himself at the edge of the box. And from there, he coolly lobbed the Mexican keeper to make it 1-1. Bulgaria had chances to equalise in the second half, and they indeed missed a penalty after that foul. That penalty saved, so 1-1 the final score, and Mexico can be pleased with their European tour. The second half was a tense affair, but Jamaica held out for a draw, and that takes them through to the next section of qualifying in the North and Central American and Caribbean region.
Soccer, and in Tallinn, home team Estonia in blue play their first World Cup qualifying match in 55 years against Switzerland. Chapuisat scores first with the visitors, after which the floodgates open. Switzerland run out 6-0 winners, with Chapuisat scoring twice, and they move now to the top of Group 1. Again, for the first time in 55 years, Lithuania in yellow walk onto a Latvian pitch as they arrive for a World Cup qualifier in Riga. The home team takes the lead after 14 minutes, when Linets heads past Martin Kenas in the Lithuanian goal. Lithuania press for an equaliser, but they become increasingly frustrated. As the supporters clash, the police move in. Lithuania eventually equalise, and 4 minutes from the end, the visitors score a second through Tereskinas. Lithuania win and now head Europe's Group 3. As the new season starts.
Welcome back. Well, trailing 1-0 from the opening leg in Panama last week, Costa Rica were back on song, certainly in this one, when the teams met San Jose on Sunday. This, a World Cup qualifier. Austin Berry converting an early penalty after 15 minutes. 1-0 to Costa Rica. 5 minutes later, Costa Rica were 2-0 up. Oscar Ramirez eventually putting the ball past a confused Panamanian defense. 2-0. Costa Rica was clearly intent on building a big lead before half-time. Juan Carlos stabbed in a third goal on the half hour. They certainly know how to celebrate, these boys. He then added his second of the game in the 33rd minute. 4-0. Well, after half-time, more gaps in the Panama defense loomed. Ostua, it was, who finally put this one away after a bizarre scramble. 5-0. I think the goalkeeper did himself a mischief then. Well, Panama's goal, the only one they got. They pulled one back in the last minute, saving a bit of pride from the penalty spot. Reni Mendieta. 5-1 though to Costa Rica. European champions Denmark are to play their first match since taking the title in Sweden in June. Tomorrow Denmark travel to Riga, where they play Latvia in their World Cup Group 3 qualifier. And somehow I don't think they're going to have too many problems. Japan has announced it will officially bid to host the first World Cup of the next century. Japan will formally bid for the 2002 finals. Cities where stadia are to be developed include Tokyo, Osaka, Yokohama, and of course, Hiroshima.
And welcome back to Eurosport News. Just 2 months after their shock win in the European Championship, Denmark made the trip to Riga in Latvia for their first World Cup qualifying match last night. Many would have expected Denmark to run away with this game, but it wasn't to be. Latvia lost to neighbours Lithuania by 2-1 last week, but this time they held on well against a Danish side which showed, well, only a little of the attacking play which took them to their first major championship win back in June in Sweden. There's no doubt that Denmark were the best team on the pitch, but the resilience of the Latvian defence surprised more than a few. That shot by Severbeck could have opened the score, but it didn't, and Latvia still holding on at 0-0 in the first half. Latvia also showing that they too are capable of composure in the middle of the park. But it was often Denmark in this game who showed the attacking style that we'd seen in June, but they lacked the finishing touch and the final ball and just weren't able to break the Latvian defence. This free kick by Severbeck also could have led to a goal, but Kim Vilfort unable to transform the Danish domination in the opening half. John Jensen of Arsenal also showing the kind of form that we saw during the European Championships. He must have been surprised by the resilience of the Latvians, and frustration just starting to creep in at this point. So Denmark really struggling to open the score, and indeed that was the final score, 0-0 between Denmark and Latvia, which means that both teams are now at the foot of their World Cup qualifying group, which is led by Lithuania with 3 points after 3 matches. Denmark will be most upset at having taken only 1 point. They would have expected to come back with a win and a healthy goal difference. It wasn't to be. They know that they now have to travel to Vilnius in Lithuania with a win almost a necessity, while Latvia now travel to Dublin on September the 9th to take on the Republic of Ireland. So 0-0, the final score in Riga between Latvia and Denmark. France played their first game since their disappointing European Championship when they took on Brazil in front of 35,000 fans at the Parc des Princes in Paris last night. Since Sweden, France have lost their manager, Michel Platini. He's been replaced by this man, Gérard Houllier, who made 1 or 2 changes to Platini's side, and notably dropping the former captain, the left-back, Manuel Amoros. Well, France struggled to get into this game. They seem to be missing the spark that inspired them during the qualification rounds for the European Championships. And they were quickly outplayed in midfield by a Brazilian side who may have lost some of the flair of the 1970s and early 1980s, but who are still one of the top sides in the world. France made 1 or 2 openings in the first half, that one to Marseille captain Didier Deschamps. But it was no surprise when Brazil took the lead after 43 minutes. Their quick turns leading to a foul by Prunier, and it was from the free kick that Jorginho crossed to his captain Rai. That header off the bar, and the rebound from Bruno Martini of AJ Auxerre, giving Brazil a 1-0 lead. As we see it again, Rai totally unmarked at the far post. The header originally onto the bar, surprising Martini, who can do no more than put it into his own net. Well, in the second half, things were very much the same. A case of France struggling to find the form that they had last winter and this spring, and Brazil starting little by little to open up and show the attacking flair that we expected from them in the 1980s. Indeed, their speed at times was too much for a French side which was reputed to be one of the quickest sides in Europe. And although Laurent Fournier here showed a few touches of skill, it was Brazil who were by far the better side on the night. And it was after 52 minutes that Brazil made it 2-0 after an excellent move involving 9 players. Those players were Romario, Mauro Silva, Rocha, Valdo, Ricardo and Careca. Careca here putting the ball over to Jorginho, whose right foot cross found Luis Enrique of Monaco in the 6-yard box. As simple as it looks, 2-0 for Brazil. Franck Sauzet could have brought France within 1 goal of Brazil in the final minute, but it wasn't to be. 2-0, the final score in Paris between France and Brazil. Meanwhile, the Brazilian defender Branco has said he would rather leave his Italian club Genoa than be forced to watch the opening matches of the season from the sidelines. Branco is one of 4 overseas players at Genoa and is the first to make a stand against the rule which allows only 3 to play at any one time.
As well as his In Kingston, Jamaica, the home team in green faced Trinidad and Tobago in a World Cup qualifier. Already 2-1 up from the first leg, Jamaica extend their lead with a goal from Davis, a professional in Israel. Trinidad and Tobago were the last team eliminated in the 1990 qualification, and they keep their 94 hopes alive with a goal from Haynes. But Jamaica hold on for the aggregate win, and they move into the second round with Canada, Bermuda and El Salvador. Tokyo's National Stadium is packed with 60,000 spectators for the second match of the friendly international series between Japan and Italian giants Juventus. The first match ended in a draw, and with Japan about to launch a new professional league next year, they're looking to improve on that result. But in the 15th minute, a penalty is awarded to the Italians. Baggio puts Juventus ahead. Naturalized Japanese midfielder Ramos is brought on early in the second half to assist striker Miura as Japan's Dutch coach Hans Uft opts for all-out attack. And in the 92nd minute, a deflected corner gives the home team the equaliser.
South Africa's chances of reaching the finals of the African Nations Cup all but disappeared with the 1-0 defeat by Zambia in Johannesburg on Sunday. This Group 5 qualifying game for the finals in Tunisia in 1994 showed that improvements are still needed in the South African team, but it must be remembered that the performance came against one of the best teams on the African continent. In the second half, David Naeti went close for South Africa, and Chippa Masinga had another scoring opportunity, though his header went wide. Zambia looked dangerous on the counter-attack, but South African keeper Mark Anderson was always alert. But then in the 72nd minute, the ball was loose in the South African area. The shots went in, but Timothy Mwitwa finally put the chance away. There it goes, 1-0 for Zambia. South Africa pressed for an equaliser, but it never came. In injury time, Chippa Masinga was actually sent off, and that was the first South African to be shown the red card in international soccer after a tackle on defender Samuel Chomba. A last chance from a free kick came to nothing for South Africa, and that left them bottom of their African Nations group with 2 matches against Mauritius to come, followed by return games in Zimbabwe and Zambia next year. So 1-0 to Zambia in Johannesburg. in a Group 4 World Cup qualifying match. Czechoslovakia were actually making their debut in the competition, while Belgium were making their third appearance already, having previously beaten Cyprus and the Faroe Islands. Top of the group with Belgium before this match were Romania, who have already beaten the Faroe Islands and also Wales. Well, it was a fine match this evening in Prague. Both teams playing high-quality football. Quick action in midfield especially. Enzo Schifo particularly impressive in the first half for Belgium. And although Czechoslovakia very active in the first half, peppering in shots on Michel Prudhomme's goal, they certainly didn't have things all their own way. And there you have it, after 34 minutes, the cross by Marc de Gries, put into his own net by Chovanec to make it 1-0 for Belgium. Czerniatinski putting the pressure on Chovanec, but the goal accredited to the Czech defender. We now join it in the second half, and Belgium still firing in the shots on the Czech goal. Mikuláško having something of a hard time this evening, and Czechoslovakia having to go and look for the equaliser. Prudhomme also not having a quiet evening. And after that foul on Kadlec, Czechoslovakia had a golden opportunity to bring the scores level. It was Kadlec himself who took the free kick after 77 minutes. You can see the mistake by Prudhomme, diving somewhat over the ball. 1-1, and Czechoslovakia breathing a sigh of relief. They're back in this one. Very much the fault, though, of Michel Prudhomme. But after 83 minutes, a lovely move by Belgium. It was Schifo who played it to Wilmot, who played it to Czerniatinski, who turned his marker to place the ball past Mikuláško. 2-1 to the visitors. Paul van Himst, the Belgian manager, can be happy with that. You can see some lovely intricate play in the Czech penalty area, holding off his marker beautifully to place his shot into the goal. 2-1 for Belgium. And they tried to make it 3-1. A lovely shot there for Belgium, but it wasn't to be. 2-1 the final score in Prague. Czechoslovakia making a very poor start. Belgium winning what may well be their hardest match, along with the match against Romania that they will have to play. They now lead the group. A fine result then for Belgium in Prague this evening. 14,000 fans were in Linz last night to see Austria take on Portugal in a friendly international. Austria were using this game as a warm-up for their World Cup qualifying series, which will begin later this month. They find themselves, of course, in the same group as Bulgaria and France, and it was Austria who dominated the game in the first half. That goal coming after 37 minutes. No surprise, really. Tony Polster, the scorer. A fine start by Austria. Rounded off with a fine goal. 1-0, and that was the score at half-time. See the goal again. A nice cross from the right. Tony Polster unmarked in the centre, easily beating the keeper. 1-0 for Austria. So 1-0 was the score at half-time, as we've said. But in the second half, things changed. Austria slowed down their pace, and after 56 minutes, it was Helder for Portugal who got the equaliser. Well deserved, after Portugal fought their way back into the match, having been dominated in the first half. 1-1 the score, and that indeed was the final score in Linz last night. We're going to take a short break now, but we'll be back with basketball and chess here on Eurosport News.
Eurosport News is brought to you by Olymp.
Welcome to Eurosport News. My name's Carlton Kirby. Well, a full night of international action, both the World Cup qualifiers and several friendly matches on the card. Scotland it was, who went to Switzerland for their Group 1 match. And a bad start for the Scots. Last played Switzerland in that 2-2 draw before the European Championships. Then enough to put Switzerland out. But it was the Swiss who went in ahead. Adrian Nupp after just 2 minutes. Ali McCoist had plenty of stick from the press of late. Didn't score in the Euro Champs. Certainly did last night. His 13th international goal, 13th goal this season. Well, it came in the 13th minute. Beautifully timed run. On hand when needed. Well, in the second half, it's the Swiss that certainly turned up the pressure. Scotland had very little of this one. Mr. Knupp again in the 72nd minute. Switzerland heading for victory, topping Group 1. Their first match against Estonia, they won 6-0. And Georges Bregti it was who topped it off in fine style. 8 minutes from the end, 3-1. Switzerland win it. And just look at the way this one curled in. Beautiful. Andy Gorham, not a chance. And once again for you. Breggy causing Scots' hearts to sink. 3-1 the final score. Well, just 6,500 people turned out to Oslo to see Norway take on San Marino. Almost a goal for every one of the people in the crowd. The first, nowhere near the last, for Rekdal. Haller, it was, just 2 minutes later in the 6th minute, who got his first of what was to prove to be a hat-trick. San Marino joined UEFA just 3 years ago. There were plenty of questions then as to whether they deserved such a world status. Those questions, I'm sure, will be raised again. With just a quarter of an hour gone, 3-0. Sorloth, the scorer. And Sorloth again, halfway through the first half. Well, something must have stirred within San Marino. They managed to hold on until the second half, that is, when Roger Nielsen made it 5-0 to the Norwegians. What a beauty. Everyone in the San Marino side blaming themselves. Haller with his second, 6-0. 6 minutes later. And Roger Nielsen appeals for handball and a penalty. The crowd may have only been 6,500, but they were certainly getting a feast. 7-0. Haller then for his hat-trick. The record score for Norway was 12-0 against France in 1946. Many thought they were going to equal that, if not beat it. Mikland making it 9-0. And finally, Rekdal, 10-0 the score. With 11 minutes remaining, not another goal. Norway 10, San Marino 0. In Group 3, Northern Ireland played host to Albania. Some of the Albanian side went missing on the way to Ireland. Doubtless they were sorely missed. Colin Clark scoring his 13th international goal on the quarter hour, overtaking Jerry Armstrong's record. And then Kevin Wilson made it 2-0 on the half hour. Just before the break, Jimmy McGilton. Oxford United It was to make it 3-0. In the meantime, a few scuffles. Albania feeling hard done to by a strong tackle. Goalkeeper Danny coming out to make the points. Jimmy Gilton then. Finally sealing it. Northern Ireland 3, Albania 0. Also in Group 3, Jack Charlton's Ireland side, well, they took on Latvia. Partisan crowd in Dublin, of course. Kevin Sheedy opening up after half an hour. Big Jack, the honorary Irishman, must have been well pleased with this performance. After the break, John Aldridge showing his class. And 20 minutes later, it was Aldridge from the spot. A little stagger before he kicked it, but it counted. And it was John Aldridge who was to get a hat-trick. 4 minutes from time, a beauty. Flying over Iguchi, the Latvian goalkeeper. Ireland 4, Latvia 0. Some good cheer for Wales as well in Group 4. Faroe Islands admitted into UEFA just 4 years ago. Ian Rush making sure there are no more upsets. 5 minutes, it was 1-0. Dean Saunders, Rush's Liverpool teammate, making it 2 just before the half hour. 6 minutes from the break, Bowen made it 3. When the Faroe Islands were admitted into UEFA, of course, they produced that marvellous win over Austria. Alan Merker was the hero then. No goals for the Faroe Islands on this night, though. Ian Rush using the post well. 4-0. Clayton Blackmore adding a 5th to the goal feast. Could have been more. Ian Rush faced the man in the bobble hat, Knutsen. Well, the bobble hat obviously worked. I'm sure it put Rush off. Not a little bit. But Rush it was, credited with the last goal. Wales 6, Faroe Islands 0. Well, in Group 5, Luxembourg, here in the red, played host to the Hungarians. And a rude awakening for the small principality. Hungary well on target. Datari opening the scoring after 16 minutes. After the turnaround, Kovacs finding the net once again for Hungary. Hungary had a bad start to their qualifiers, their home game. They lost 2-1 to Iceland. So they're out to prove themselves away from home. They certainly did that, not least that man, Kalman Kovacs. And indeed, it was he who got the third and final goal of this game in the 78th minute. The final score, Hungary 3, Luxembourg crashing to a home defeat 0. Well, the big grudge match of the night, Finland and Sweden. Helsinki Stadium packed with 27,000 people. Well, was it a penalty? Not that one, says the police lady. Nevertheless, a penalty was to come in the 79th minute. Klas Ingersson finally putting it away. 27,000 Finnish fans whistling their hearts out. Certainly wasn't going to put Ingersson off. He chose his spot and took it. Finland 0, Sweden 1. Welcome back. Well as those World Cup qualifiers, quite a few friendly matches going on. The Netherlands playing host to Italy in one of the best. Dennis Bergkamp delighting 12,500 fans. Surprisingly low crowd in Eindhoven turning out to see this Italian side. Indeed, Van Basten providing Bergkamp with a second. 2-0 after just 21 minutes. 8 minutes later, AC Milan's Iranio pull one back. And just before the break, Roberto Baggio it was who stepped up to take the penalty. Muted, to say the least, the crowd. 2-2 then, it stayed into the break. Italy turned on the pressure, just couldn't get in. Baggio hitting the crossbar. Eventually the breakthrough came though. Vialli, beautiful header. Not such a good haircut. Italy winning 3-2. Well, plenty of press criticism of England's game in Spain, in Santander. Busquets, Martin Busquets for the Spanish, turning on the style. Perhaps a little hard done to England. 1-0 it was. Fonesca with the game's only goal. You don't go to Spain, come away with a big win easily. Nevertheless, criticism for England. Spain 1, England 0. In Poland, Israel playing for the first time in the European zone. Political reasons have kept them out of this zone in the World Cup qualifiers in the past. They used to settle themselves placing in the Oceania zone against the likes of Australia and New Zealand. Roman Schwezek it was who put Poland ahead after 24 minutes. And then a familiar name, Ronnie Rosenthal it was, who levelled it for the Israelis. Solo effort into the box. 1-1, the final score. Israel, a great result for them. They're still to face Bulgaria, Sweden, France and Austria. A full night of international football action. Angus Loughran has the details.
Yes, World Cup qualifying in Bulgaria against France, the big game of the night in Group 6. Bulgaria, who've started off their campaign so well, beating Finland by 3-0 against a French side who'd never won in Bulgaria and had to come back from the disappointment of losing their last game against Brazil and, of course, the summer's European Championships, when France were expected to do so much under Michel Platini, but now under Gérard Houllier, they've come back and expecting more. Well, bad news for the French again this evening. Papin, the culprit this time, he fouled Kostadinov, and you can see here the challenge very late, and the experienced Papin, now playing in AC Milan, gave away a penalty. Bulgaria then taking the lead, and it was the start of what was to be a very disappointing night for the French. Hristo Stoichkov from Barcelona grabbing his 5th goal for his country. Worse was to follow though for the French, who really were very lethargic. The second goal coming within 6 or 7 minutes. They could have gone 2-0 down there as the chances rained in for the Bulgarians, with Stoichkov in particular having an excellent match. The French management team must have wondered just when their luck was going to change, having never won in Bulgaria before. Their night was completely ruined with a second goal here, a slight freakish chipped effort from Ballarit. And Bulgaria 2 in front, and the French not knowing what's hit them in this first match in Group 6. Remember, Austria, Sweden, Israel and Finland make up the group. And Balakov from Sporting Lisbon scoring the second goal. Martini is well beat. The mistake there was by Emmanuel Petit from Monaco. France tried desperately hard to get back into the game. Bordeaux shot their best effort, but at half-time, it was 2-0 to Bulgaria. Into the second half now, and the French side knew that they had to score at least twice to get a point. Their best chance coming to Decamps. And you see it again. He should have done a lot better than that, at least hitting the target. France continued to press in the closing minutes, but Bulgaria always felt had enough. First appeals for a penalty, and then an off-the-line clearance denying the French. Kiev from Bulgaria saving the day and getting injured in the process. Coming up to the full-time whistle, it was a night when France once again went to Bulgaria and came back with no reward. 2 wins out of 2 for Bulgaria, who beat Finland 3-0 in their first match. And next, they've beaten France.
France travelled to Bulgaria for a World Cup qualifier, hoping to restore some national soccer pride. But striker Hristo Stoichkov gives the Bulgarians the lead from a penalty. 6 minutes later, Bulgarian pressure leads to a second as Balakov's deflected shot beats Martini. The French, a shadow of their former selves, are unable to fight back, and Bulgaria win to head European Group 6. In the South Pacific, Australia travelled to Honiara to take on the Solomon Islands in an Oceania Group World Cup qualifier. The visitors in yellow score after just 8 minutes through Viart, and they look to be in control. However, excessive heat and humidity take their toll on the Socceroos. With only 7 minutes left, the Solomon Islands equalise through Vato. But substitute McCulloch scores a late winner for the Australians to save coach Thompson's blushes.
The Faroe Islands have sprung surprises in the past, but the present World Cup campaign in the European Cup Group 4 has been notable for the number of goals conceded. Cyprus were the visitors in Torshavn on Tuesday, and 2-0 it ended. Sotiro and Papa Vasilin giving Cyprus a 2-0 lead.
Eurosport News is brought to you by Olympus Camera.
Welcome back. A full night of European footballing action. Qualifications for the World Cup in America up for grabs. Denmark, the European champions, they went off to Lithuania, the capital Vilnius. A tremendous crowd turned out to see this one. Denmark, of course, drew 0-0 with Latvia just a fortnight ago. Widely regarded as points lost, despite tremendous efforts by these Baltic states. And tonight, sadly for Denmark, well, it was a similar story. Schmeichel, Laudrup and Krispetsen, they all shot over the bar. Schmeichel being kept extremely busy. At the other end, Martin Kennis in the Lithuanian goal. Well, he was just quite outstanding, foiling many a Danish attempt and then saving a penalty. Well, you can't do better than that, as you can hear from the crowd. Christoph, the Dane, who missed it. The crowd went mad. The Danes, well, they just got depressed. The deadlock continued, despite some fine efforts. The Lithuanians going close. The score was to remain 0-0. Elstrup just striking the bar. But it just wasn't going to happen. Lithuania 0, Denmark 0. The Danes mightily displeased. In Oslo, the Netherlands went on to take on Norway. Much changed side with new coach Dick Advocat changing the format. Certainly didn't seem to pay off. A foul by Danny Blint after just 6 minutes really puts any hopes of an early lead on the back burner for Holland. Getip Rekdal it was, the Norwegian number 9, who stepped up to do the business. (1-0). Holland now desperate to bounce back. That's exactly what they did just 5 minutes later. And what better man to do it than Dennis Bergkamp, the Dutch number 10. Norway and their fans reveling in the 1-0 lead. They enjoyed themselves for just 5 minutes, as we say. Bergkamp leveling it. Picked his spot beautifully. Slotted it home. Working beautifully in the opposition's box. Finding his mark to perfection. Once again. Holland have dropped their old 4 front player system. Now just 2 up front. And they're also missing Hullet, Van Aller, and the out of form Brian Roy. Big changes then in the format. And the gaps open to exploitation. Goran Soloth winning it for Norway. And what a way to do it. Dick Advocat, the new coach of the Netherlands, with plenty of work to do. The final score then, Norway 2, Holland 1. In Group 2, Poland took on Turkey. Poland, of course, with a tremendous World Cup record. Turkey, well, they've never actually made the finals, but they made a decent account of themselves here in Warsaw. Last night's World Cup qualifiers in Europe produced a few surprises. Holland, one of the casualties in Group 2, the same as England. Kjetil Rijkaard it was who opened for Norway in Oslo with a penalty after 9 minutes. Just 1 minute later, it seemed the Dutch were back in it. Van Basten, the provider, Bergkamp levelling up for Holland. That's the way it stayed until half-time. After the break, Norway took the game by the throat and shook it, not gently. Göran Sarov piercing the Dutch defence. 2-1 the final score. Holland have lost their last 3 internationals. Meanwhile, Poland entertained Turkey. In Poznan, a crowd of 10,000 saw them win. The 33rd minute goal by Valdok, enough to see off the Turks. And this is how Group 2 is settling down. England, of course, haven't played yet. Norway at the top. They played two games. They got maximum points. The Netherlands down in 3rd, most disappointed. Just 1 game, but no points. Well, in Group 3, Vilnius, the venue. Denmark, the disappointed team. Lithuania, of course, the hosts. And on 55 minutes, Denmark missed a penalty. Martin Kenas, the goalkeeper for Lithuania, hero for a night. Denmark depressed. Meanwhile, in Riga, 7,000 fans turned out to see Latvia, the other Baltic state, doing well. Not least their goalkeeper, Karavadjes. They held Spain to a 0-0 draw. Interestingly enough, this is the first time since 1954 that the Spanish team has been without any Real Madrid players. Looks like they could use a few. Latvia, it was, who drew 0-0 with Denmark 2 weeks ago. Still difficult to beat. This game, no fluke. Spain dominated throughout, but Latvia it was who closed the game down well. In the second half, the game got slower and slower, almost grinding to a halt as Spain gave up trying to break through this incredibly stout defence. Spanish fans who travel there presumably realising just what Denmark had gone through. Karavadjes, that goalkeeper, tremendous night for him. So Ireland it is, who lead with maximum points here in Group 3. Denmark depressingly down in 5th. The European champions won't enjoy that. Spain ahead of them with 3 points. Northern Ireland also with 3, having played 2 games. Lithuania in 2nd place, but they've played 4 matches in all. Bottom, Albania. In Kozice, 17,000 turned out to see the Faroe Islands, the amateurs, take on Czechoslovakia. Well, the 21st minute, Valef Namacek, the man who plays for Toulouse, opened the scoring. And then the Faroe Islands held on dramatically until just 5 minutes from time. The amateurs from the Little Isles took everything that was thrown at them. Then 5 minutes from time, they cracked. Kuka of Slavia Prague made it 2-0. Just 2 minutes later, Kuka again, 3-0. And then it was all sealed by Peter Dubovsky in the end. His 89th minute penalty sealed the match. 4-0 for Czechoslovakia. And this is how Group 4 is settling down. Belgium on top. Maximum points from 3 games. Poor old Faroe Islands played 5. No points at all.
Predictably, the Spanish get off to a tentative start with marked uncertainty in their defence. And while Spain spurn their chances at the other end, the Latvians are content to attack on the break. But the home team are equally wasteful with their opportunities. The match ends goalless, and the Republic of Ireland remain at the head of the group.
Brazil, in their traditional yellow, play host to Costa Rica in a friendly international. Rai opens the scoring for the home team. And 6 minutes later, he increases the lead. Costa Rica reply through Mallorca, but they soon concede a penalty which gives Rai his hat-trick and Brazil a 3-1 half-time lead. Jimenez then narrows Costa Rica's deficit, but Renato scores Brazil's 4th, and they continue their unbeaten streak under new coach Carlos Alberto Parreira.
The next round of the World Cup qualifying games are underway. This evening, Sweden took on Bulgaria in the Rosunda Stadium in Stockholm. And indeed, most of the action went to the Swedes. The men, of course, in their traditional gold and blue. The 19th minute, that attack by Sweden. Dahlin it was who fluffed the shot in the end. More chances came the way of the Swedes. Eriksson slotting past the post. Wasn't all one-way traffic though. Bulgarians through Blankov. Going close. Just before the break. Young again squandering the chances offered up by the Bulgarians to the European Championship semi-finalists. At the other end, Eriksson doing marvellous things in the Swedish goal. Of course, Swede keeper Ravelli broke 2 ribs against the Finns. Out of it this evening. After the break then, the deadlock finally broken. Martin Dahlin. 1-0 to Sweden. Well, relief indeed for the Swedes, as well as the crowd. And didn't he pick his mark beautifully? Look at this. "20 minutes later, sustained pressure from Sweden paid dividends. Anders Limpar providing the cross. Ingerson missed it. Patterson certainly didn't. 2-0 to the Swedes. Well, Sweden cranked up the pressure. But no more goals were on offer tonight. The final score, Sweden 2, Bulgaria 0. Sweden go to the top of Group 6. Maximum points from their 2 games.
A 10-0 home win tends to put the home team in good humour for the return leg, so Norway took themselves optimistically to San Marino. The Norwegians in red and white were ahead after only 7 minutes. Jan Jakobsen the scorer. But Scotland will testify that the tight little stadium and the bumpy pitch at Serravalle don't make for a smooth run of the ball. The aerial route proved profitable when the towering Jostein Flo headed the second, but that was the end. 2-0 to Norway and 2 more points. They sit comfortably at the top of Group 2 with maximum points and a goal difference of 13. There are, though, still 26 matches to play and plenty of time for the pack.
Final appearance, Paul Gascoigne was back at Wembley, and England looked good in the early stages. Shearer and Wright combined in the first couple of minutes for a chance that Platt might have accepted. Then it was Gaza opening up the defence, and from Platt's cross, Shearer's powerful header well saved by Torsford. Graham Taylor was looking for goals from the Shearer-Wright partnership, and Wright wasted a golden chance. Gascoigne, meanwhile, was his old cheeky self, and England almost snatched the lead just before half-time. The best move of the half involving Wright and Ince, and Platt denied again by Torsford. Gascoigne's enthusiasm then got the better of him, and he was booked for elbowing. But the yellow card didn't put him off, and Gaza almost provided a goal for David Batty. The breakthrough, though, came only 2 minutes later. Stuart Pearce's free kick touched home by David Platt. England almost added a second straight afterwards, but Shearer's header was cleared off the line by Mickelin.
So good evening and welcome to Eurosport News. The World Cup qualifying tournament took centre stage last night as some of the world's top footballing nations started out on the road they hope will take them to the United States in 1994. Italy haven't had to qualify for the World Cup since 1982, and their opening match in Group 1 saw them take on Switzerland in Cagliari, the Swiss having won their opening 2 matches. And what a start Switzerland had last night. Orol it was, opening the score for the visitors after 18 minutes. We see here the slow motion, the cross coming from Suter on the left. A terrible mistake by Marchegiani and bad marking by Costa Curta. Orol chipping the goalkeeper, 1-0 with 18 minutes gone. And indeed, Switzerland were to double that score just 3 minutes later. In fact, they were to score 2 goals in 4 minutes here. Again, a terrible mistake in the Italian defence, worsened by Marchegiani. Chapuisat getting the second goal. 2-0 the score for Switzerland. A dream start for the men in red. You see it again, Costa Curta's back pass, leaving the goalkeeper Marchegiani with very little choice, but he didn't do very well with what he had. And Chapuisat, thank you very much, 2-0, and that was the half-time score. And indeed, the Swiss were on the attack in the second half. This chance could have made it 3-0. Just sliding by the left-hand post of Marchegiani. 2-0 though still to Switzerland, but Italy were to come back, and with just 6 minutes to go, Roberto Baggio of Juventus was to make the most of, again, poor defensive errors in the Swiss defence.